Today, I want to talk about the coming war of GOG and Magog. You ever heard the names GOG and Magog? Few people have. Some of you might be really clear what those terms are, what that is, who those are. Some of you are, like me for a lot of years, like I heard those terms connected with the end times. I had no clue what they meant. And it's really important we know what these mean, because I believe we're really, really, really close, and I'll show you this today, really close to the coming war of GOG and Magog. To be clear, there are actually two wars of GOG and Magog prophesied in the Bible. There's one in Ezekiel 38 and 39. That's the one we're going to look at today. That's the impending war. I'll show you today, I think we're right at the precipice of that war. That's in the Bible. Now, there's another war towards the end of Revelation, I think Revelation chapter 20, GOG and Magog. And that is after the millennial reign of Jesus Christ. So Jesus comes back to earth, he sets up his kingdom here on earth, and we live with him for 1,000 years while Satan is bound. At the end of that 1,000 years, the Bible says, he's loosed for a short time. And he gathers people who have come against God, people who lived through the tribulation, people that hadn't died and been resurrected. And there'll be people born during that time to those people. Satan is identified as GOG in that war. And he will lead nations of people who are against God in one final battle, and he'll be cast away forever. That's not the message, but I just want to give you some background of what's going on. So to help you understand as we read along, here's point number one today that'll help you understand. GOG is an anti-God world leader, and Magog is the nation or nations that he leads. All right, so GOG and Magog are both names. GOG is the name of a person. Magog is the name of a region or an area, all right? And that's the same in Ezekiel 38, 39, and Revelation 20. So he's like, well, why didn't he just say Satan? Well, it does say Satan will lead the rebellion of GOG and Magog, and they call him GOG. GOG is basically that sort of anti-God attitude, that anti-God push against anything that has to do with Jesus Christ. And so there's two of those wars, but the other one is, it's at least 1,000 years away, or 1,007 years away, at least, and probably more. But the one in Ezekiel, the GOG-Magog war in Ezekiel 38 and 39 is really close. So we know that, well, we're pretty sure that the GOG-Magog war that we're going to talk about today, Ezekiel 38 and 39, is before the tribulation, because apparently there's no temple in Jerusalem. And during the tribulation, and this really isn't a sermon series on the tribulation and the rapture, although we'll be talking about that at some point. We're really talking about, okay, what's leading up to all that. During the tribulation, in the middle of the 7 years, the first 3.5 years are going to go pretty well. In the middle of that 7-year period, the Bible says this in several different books of the Bible, the Antichrist, the real Antichrist, the world leader, is going to come into the third temple, the rebuilt temple in Jerusalem, and desecrate it. There's no temple there now for him to do that. They're getting close to building one. They've got all the stuff to build it, and that'll probably be another sermon. I'm amazed at how they're ready to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. They've got a lot of their sacrificial items, a lot of items that will go into the temple are ready to go. They're training their priests. They just don't have the building yet. I believe that's soon to come, and that will probably be an upcoming sermon. But during this war of the GOG and Magog in Ezekiel 38 and 39, there appears to be no temple. So we know that's kind of a pre-trib war. And this is not Armageddon. there's a war, there is a war called Armageddon at the end of the tribulation. And this war of Gog and Magog is not that. Okay, it's a different war. Bottom line is the stage is set, I believe, for this war, Gog and Magog, to be in at any time. And I know you might be thinking, why do we have to come to church and talk about war? I mean, everything's so depressing already. Why do we have to talk war? Why can't we talk about something happy? And I get that, but here's the deal. If we don't understand what's going on, it's just going to add to the anxiety. It's going to add to the fear. And we're like, what's going on? It's like, but if we know, it's like, here's what's going on. God's got it. God's got it handled. And so that's why we're taking time to do this. So I'm going to read, we're going to actually read all of Ezekiel 38, not at one time. We're going to break it down because I don't want to miss stuff, and I don't want to just, opine a lot. I want you to see it in his word, help you to understand it. So Ezekiel is a prophet of God, and he was, 600 years-ish, 500-600 years before Jesus Christ, all right? So that's when he's prophesying. So the nation of Israel is in ruins. They've all been packed away. Everything's torn down. The temple's torn down. There really is no Israel anymore. And again, as backdrop, in Ezekiel 36, which we looked at last week, God prophesies through Ezekiel the rebuilding of the nation of Israel, which we know happened officially on May 14th, 1948. And if you want to know when the end times clock started ticking, that's the date, May 14th, 1948. If you want to go back and look at last week's sermon, that explains all that. It's on our website, newlifefairfield.com, also on our church app, I think. So anyway, that explains all that. So I'm not going to recover all of that. So that's Ezekiel 36. He's prophesying that the nation of Israel is going to be reborn. It didn't happen for 2,600 years, but it happened in some of your lifetime. So now we're in Ezekiel 38. Starting in verse 1, the word of the Lord came to me. Son of man, set your face against Gog, that's the guy, of the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshach and Tubal. Prophesy against him and say, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I am against you, Gog, chief prince of Meshach and Tubal. I will turn you around, put hooks in your jaws, and bring you out with your whole army, your horses, your horsemen fully armed, and a great horde with large and small shields, all of them brandishing their swords. Persia, Cush, and Put will be with them, all with shields and helmets. Also Gomer with all its troops, and Beth Togarmah from the far north with all its troops. The many nations will be with you. Get ready, be prepared, you and all the hordes gathered about you, and take command of them. After many days, you will be called to arms. In future years, you will invade a land that has recovered from war, whose people were gathered from many nations to the mountains of Israel. He's talking about 1948, which had long been desolate. They had been brought out from the nations, and now all of them live in safety. That's where they are right now. Verse 9, you, talking to Gog, and all your troops and the many nations with you will go up, advancing like a storm. You'll be like a cloud covering the land. All right, so if you want to keep notes, I've got them in your bulletin if you want to keep along. It's also on our app. But I put that because a lot of you kind of want to like, what do you say? What do you say? And so you can fill this in. But so here's number 2. In what we just read, God is against Gog, right? We know that. And he entices him into war against Israel in the last days. He says, I'm going to put hooks in your jaw and drag you into war. Now, if you know the character and nature of Jesus, of God, Jesus is God. If you know the character and nature of God, he doesn't mess with people's free will. And he doesn't make people do bad or violent things. But he uses bad and violent people for his his will to be done. Quick example, and I try not to go off in too big of a rabbit trail. A lot of people are confused in the Old Testament when it says God hardened Pharaoh's heart. Have you read that? Like during the captivity and they letting the nation of Israel free in the time of Moses, it says God hardened Pharaoh's heart. And people are like, oh, I hope he doesn't harden my heart. He's not messing with your free will. Here's how God hardened Pharaoh's heart. God showed up so real to Pharaoh that because Pharaoh thought he was God, and pharaohs were considered gods, one of many gods. And so they think they're pretty much at the top of the food chain. God, our God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the only true God, showed up so real to Pharaoh that Pharaoh could not deny him, and that hardened his heart. It's like sometimes when God shows up so real to people, they're either like, okay, that's so real, it's either yes or no. Either there's no denying that he's not real, so either I'm with him or I'm against him. And people are forced to make that decision. Now in the U.S., a lot of people have not been forced to make that decision because we've been living a pretty cushy life. But in a lot of places, and what's going to happen here, God shows up so real is that people are like, okay, he's real. Now you would think that everybody go, okay, he's proven himself real, so therefore I'm going to follow him. Not everybody does that. In fact, a lot of people won't. A lot. Millions. Hundreds of millions are going to say, no, you know what? No. And they're going to be hardened. Not because God tweaked with their free will, but because he just showed up as real. And that's basically, I believe, what's happening with GOG is when the Lord says, I'm going to put hooks in you and drag you down, he's already predisposed to do that. So God's just like, hey, GOG, have you looked at Israel lately? See what's going on there. Just take a look, see what you think. That's what he's going to do. And I'll show you a little bit what GOG is going to see and why he's going to want to go down there. But that's what's going to happen. So just so you know, God isn't making GOG do something he does not want to do. He's just kind of calling his attention to it. So it also says that several nations joined GOG in this Magog war, at GOG and Magog. And so they mentioned some of them. Some of the areas mentioned are Meshach, Tubal, Persia, Cush, Put, and Torgama. Those are like, those names don't mean anything to me. Maybe Persia does. Because Persia, up until 1935, I believe, it was Persia up until 1935. In 1935, it became Iran. And so, again, some of you were alive when the nation of Iran was actually named Persia. So we know one nation here. It's Iran, Persia. So how do we know where these areas are? How do we know where Meshach or Tubal or Torgama or Cush, where are those? I'm going to do this quickly, but if you go way back to Genesis, before these were nations or areas, these were people. They're the names of people. Let me read that to you. Genesis 10, verse 1. This is the account of Shem. So this is Noah. So Noah, right? The flood. And he has 3 sons, and they have wives. And after the flood, they repopulate the earth. And there's a genealogy here. This is the account of Shem, Ham, and Japheth, Noah's sons, who themselves had sons after the flood. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, Gomer, that's like Magog, not that Gomer, sorry. You have to also be old to get that one too, or else have TV land. Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshach, and Tyrus. Okay, those are sons. Those are people. The sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, Riphath, and Torgama. Those are people. Genesis 10:6. The sons of Ham, Cush, Egypt, Put, and Canaan. These are names of people. Genesis 10:32 kind of wraps it all up. These are the clans of Noah's sons, according to their lines of descent within their nations. From these nations spread out over the earth after the flood. So these were names of people who spread out, and their names became the name of that nation. You follow me so far? All right. So we know from history of the Bible, from secular history, because there's a lot of secular historians out there who are not Christian. So we know generally pretty close where these nations were located. And we'll put a map. Put up map number 1. I don't know how well you'll be able to see it up there. Map 1. There we are. So this is a map of the Middle East. So up there in that yellow where it says Magog, that's Russia. Magog is Russia, mostly. And then the orange where it says Persia, that's Iran. You can see northern Africa, Put and Cush. And then Togarmah is Turkey. Gomer is Eastern Europe, actually goes clear up into, a lot of scholars think that would go clear up into Germany. So it's for sure Eastern Europe, maybe even into Germany. So that's pretty much a map of the nations who are going to come into war, going to join Magog in war against Israel. So it's fairly clear. Now there's some people say no, Togarmah is that Gomer is part of Togarmah or whatever, but it's pretty close. All right. You can't really see Israel, but kind of in the middle of the map, there's a black spot, teeny tiny country. That's Israel. Notice it's surrounded by all those nations. So Magog is the area of Russia. And included in Russia are these two cities, these two areas, Meshach and Tubal. Many historians, secular and biblical, believe that Meshach is a transliteration, or Moscow is a transliteration of Meshach. Meshach, basically, most believe, is Moscow. So it says, Gog, you who leads Magog, which is mostly Russia, which includes the cities of Moscow and Tubal. And I think there's a city in Russia called Tbilisi, I think. Is that in Russia? It was in the Soviet Union somewhere. So we're starting to identify some specific areas there. Again, we identified Gomer as Eastern Europe, maybe up into Germany. Put is Libya. If you look on that's bigger than Libya, but it includes Libya. Cush is Sudan. I don't know if those of you, I know the news is so depressing, it's hard to follow, but if you've been following the news, you know that Sudan is a mess. There's some really hardline Muslims there who they've taken people captive, they've murdered people. It's in horrible disarray right now, but Cush is Sudan. And so those are the areas. And of course, Persia is Iran. We've identified that. So put up map 2, if you would, Naomi. And so this is more of a modern day map. I mean, it might be a little old because it says Soviet Union up in the yellow there. So I don't know if that's so old it says Soviet Union or if it's like prophetic. Think about that for a minute. Anyway, so you probably can't, you might be too far back to really read that, but on the upper middle there, that yellow, that's Russia. And then the big orange rectangular thing, that's Turkey. And then to the lower right of Turkey, that big green one is Iran. But then I want to show you, scoot over to the other smaller green country in the middle of the map. That's Syria. Syria is going to be pivotal in this war, and we know that just because of where it's located, but also what's going on in current events. Because remember, the sermon series is Bible prophecy and current events, how they connect together. Syria is really pivotal. So before I talk about Syria, let me back up a little bit. A few years ago, and I don't remember because I didn't write it down, but I remember, I don't know if it was 4 or 5 years ago, when Russia and Iran started aligning with each other. And the whole world was like, Russia and Iran? Those are strange bed partners. And they have never, in the history of the world, there's no historic evidence of Russia and Iran ever being aligned together. And yet, 4 or 5 years ago, maybe it's longer, I don't know. I lose track of time, but they are very aligned right now. There's so many articles I could show you, but this is not like an article sermon. This is like biblical. But I'm just telling you, if you've been watching the news, you know Iran and Russia are tight, really tight. So, Iran borders Turkey. Turkey borders Russia, but Turkey borders Syria. Also in the history of the world, Turkey, well, let's back up. Since Christianity, for sure, since the time of Jesus Christ, Turkey has been a strong ally of Christians and even of Israel. Turkey was always dependable to help defend Israel. And the United States, Turkey's a NATO nation. And we could always depend on Turkey to tell the other Middle Eastern people who are trying to attack Israel, like, back down, boys. Because Turkey has a pretty formidable army, and they're strategically located. Turkey is going to be needed for any country to get to Israel. Can you see that on the map? You can. In the last several years, Turkey has become an extremely volatile country and it's been Islam for a long time, but the Muslims that are there are very militant. And they are aligning more with the other Muslim nations of Put and Kush and Iran, Libya, Sudan, Ethiopia, and they are no longer friendly to Israel. No longer. In fact, the president of Turkey, last name Erdogan, said this recently. This was May 6th, headline in Newsweek, and I'm not a big Newsweek fan, but this is what they reported. Headline, Russia tells U.S. only their troops are welcome in Syria. In other words, Russia's saying, hey, U.S., you are not welcome in Syria. We are. Right now, there are, I don't know how many, lots and lots and lots of Russian troops in Syria, have been for several years now, to help with the Syrian civil war. Syria is a mess. And so Russia's there to help. I don't have the picture. I couldn't snag it because it was on a video. And I just saw it like a day ago from Amir Safardi, who's with Israel. Anyway, doesn't matter. There's recent satellite photos of supersonic Russian bombers in Syria. They're there. And we know there's lots of other like tanks and artillery. You've heard of Hezbollah? They're in Syria, being funded by Iran. Hezbollah, this count just came out. They have 140,000 rockets stockpiled in Syria. 140,000. Just a few weeks ago, Israel was being bombed from the Gaza Strip by Hamas, who's different than Hezbollah, but they participate. They fired, I think, 4,000 or 5,000 rockets. That was a test run to see how many rockets will it take to overwhelm Israel. Okay, we got the answer. It's 5,000. I mean, they didn't get overwhelmed, but there are a few that got through. So Hezbollah has been stacking up these rockets on the southern border. You can read this anywhere. Incredible news sources. Iran is The money that the U.S. is giving Iran, they're giving Hezbollah to build more rockets to put on the southern border of Syria right next to Israel. So Syria is such a mess, like, oh, we don't know what's going on. Russia, like, well, we're here to help you, and Iran will help you. So right now, Syria is jam-packed with Russian troops and Iranian troops. Now, why are they that interested in Syria? No, they're not interested in Syria. Syria is a mess. They're interested in Israel for different reasons that we're going to talk about this in a minute. Things in our world change so quickly that the news regarding this prophecy changes almost on a daily basis, and it changed 2 days ago, maybe 3 days. Over the last 8 months, some really big political happenings changed the landscape for this war. Number one, we had a presidential election here in the U.S. Our previous president, number 45, well, back up, number 44, drew a line in the Middle East in Syria and said, you cannot cross that line. And they crossed it, and nothing happened, all right? So 45 comes along, and he doesn't have to draw a line. They're just like, don't mess with that guy, he's crazy. I don't mean that in a disparagement, but you know what I'm saying? It was kind of like when Ronald Reagan was president. Here's your hostages, take them, please don't hurt us. If the U.S. had a very strong president who was firmly committed to Israel, Russia would never think about attacking Israel. I don't think we have that now. We don't have people don't have the gumption to get into a war to protect Israel. So that was big enough just in the U.S. because we're a strong ally, have been a strong ally of Israel. In Israel itself, 2 or 3 days ago, the longtime prime minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, is out of office. Been there 12 years. And then he was, I think he was foreign minister or something way before that. So Benjamin Netanyahu is very strong militarily. He's one of those guys that the nations look at Israel like, don't mess with them, because he will bomb you back into the Stone Ages. And they've done that under him, like Iran starts getting a bomb ready or a nuclear facility. Netanyahu's like, go take them out, boys. And they're gone. And like, people are like, how'd that happen? Never mind, nothing to see here, folks, move on. I'm just saying he takes care of stuff. People on the far right politically in Israel don't like him. People on the far left really don't like him. Really don't like him. And so what happened, and I don't want to spend a whole bunch of time on this, but basically what happened is this past week, Netanyahu, because it's prime minister, he has to form a government. There's so many parties. There's 6 or 8 parties in Israel. And so whoever wants to be prime minister has to go and get the support of the majority of the parties. He has to have the majority in the Knesset. And Netanyahu couldn't get it, he couldn't put it together. He came really close, but the people on the far right and the people on the far left said, no, we don't like you. And so the far right and the far left made a coalition. Who'd have thunk that? It includes 6 members who are Muslim from their own party. And they made a coalition to pick their own prime minister to oust Netanyahu. And the new prime minister is very sympathetic to the Palestinians, and he has no gumption, nor do their parties who are in control. They have no gumption to start a war. Or really, I mean, they'll probably try to defend themselves. They'll say that, but they're not, I'll just say they're not strong militarily. And they don't want to be on purpose. So for the first time in decades, we have world leaders, including in their own country of Israel, who really aren't interested in stirring things up too much. That's significant. I wish I could take more time there, but I'm just telling you that just changed just in the last couple days. I'm telling you, every week, almost on a daily basis, there's something happening. The satellite photos with the supersonic bombers of Russia in Syria is recent. So when this war happens, our U.S. president, whoever that may be when this war happens, is either going to be weak or he's really going to understand Bible prophecy. One or the other. Because the U.S. doesn't appear to be involved in this war. And so it's either like a president's going to I ain't messing with that, or there could be, I think it's a stretch, there could be a president at some future point that says, yeah, that's not good, but I know the Bible, and God's doing this, and God's going to win this war. We'll see this in a minute. So we'll let God do his thing. So that's one of two things that could be going on there. Okay, time to move out of the political thing and move on here. But it's political, right? But I mean, it's spiritual, but anyway. Ezekiel 38, verse 10. This is what the sovereign Lord says. On that day, thoughts will come into your mind, and you will devise an evil scheme. He's talking to GOG, the leader of Russia. You will say, I will invade a land of unwalled villages. I will attack a peaceful and unsuspecting people, all of them living without walls and without gates and bars. I will plunder and loot and turn my hand against the resettled ruins and the people gathered from the nations, rich in livestock and goods, living at the center of the land. Sheba and Dedan and the merchants of Tarshish and all her villages will say to you, have you come to plunder? Have you gathered your hordes to loot, to carry off silver and gold, to take away livestock and goods, and to seize much plunder? All right, let's break this down a little bit. Number 4, Israel will be regathered as a nation and will be living in peace when GOG attacks. All right, so it doesn't mean that they might not send a few bombing missions to take out a reactor or something like that, but generally it's going to be unsuspecting. It's like, why are you attacking us? We've been nice to you. Whatever. Again, we know that this war has not happened yet because it has to happen after 1948. Because the nation has to be regathered, but it has to be before the third temple's built. So we're right in that time right now. Oh, by the way, the third temple talks about rebuilding, prophesied in Ezekiel 40. But we're not there yet. 38 and 39 comes before 40. So Russia comes for plunder. Number 5, Russia will invade Israel for economic reasons. Verse 12, God says, you will say, I'm going to plunder. I will plunder. And it talks about livestock and silver and whatever. Again, this couldn't have happened a few years ago, I don't think. Some of you may know Russia is a major provider of petroleum products to Europe, specifically natural gas. And I don't know if you saw in the news, a few weeks ago, where there was a pipeline, oil pipeline coming from Russia to Germany. And the previous administration, President 45, had got it stopped because he knew that Russia would get the hand on Europe and control them with the supply of oil. When the current administration came in, they lifted that. You may have saw that in the news. So that pipeline's going in. It's going to be done soon. Russia is a big deal in oil and gas. In just the last year or two, Israel has become a big deal in gas, mostly in the last year. They have discovered, let me read this to you. This is out of Forbes magazine. Okay, this is from 2 years ago. Forbes magazine 2019. Israel was always thought to be bereft of any energy resources, right? Israel doesn't have any energy. All the other nations have it. Saudi Arabia has all the oil. Israel doesn't have any of that. But in 1999, a US-based Noble Energy and Israel-based group discovered some gas. In 2009, they discovered 10 trillion cubic feet of natural gas, 10 trillion with a T of cubic feet of natural gas, and that was the smaller find. Recently, they've discovered 16 trillion cubic feet of natural gas in another field. This attracted world attention. That's a lot of natural gas, and there's oil there. By the way, and I'm just going to take a little. I know is this interesting, or are you falling asleep? Are we good? Okay. Can I show you what was prophesied about oil and gas being found in Israel? Like 4,000 years before they found it, or 3,500 years. There are a lot of verses. I'm going to give you 3 scriptures. There's way more than that, but time, right? Isaiah 43:5. This is God speaking. I will give you, he's speaking to Israel, I will give you hidden treasures, riches stored in secret places, so that you may know that I am the Lord, the God of Israel, who summoned you by name. So God says, I've stored some secret things in secret places for you. It's like, ooh, what is it? Deuteronomy, chapter 33, verse 19. Again, God speaking. They will summon peoples to the mountain, this is in Israel, and there offer the sacrifices of the righteous. They will feast on the abundance of the seas, on the treasures hidden in the sand. Guess where the oil and gas is being pumped out of? The sea. Guess where the oil is? Under the sand. All right, in case you're not convinced yet, one more scripture. Deuteronomy 32:13. He made him ride high on the places of the earth. He would be Israel. So God made Israel ride high on the places of the earth. And he ate the produce of the field. And he made him suck honey from the rock and oil from the flinty rock. Oil was not a deal until what, the late 1800s? So how did somebody 3,500 years before, when oil isn't even like petroleum oil, is like, we don't know what that is? Like, how do you prophesy that? It's like, you will suck oil out of the rock. Fracking was like prophesied. How cool is that? And God's saying, in the last days, I've hidden some surprises for you. What is it? Like 26 trillion cubic feet of natural gas that they found so far, and oil, that huge oil fields that they're now just beginning to tap. By the way, we can credit a lot of this from a Christian guy, I think out of Texas, don't quote me on that, Zion Petroleum, who read these prophecies and said, I'm going to Israel. Totally, that's what happened. So I go, you guys start reading the Bible, where should I go? You're going to be taken care of really well right here. So, number one, Russia is really, what's the word I'm looking for? Threatened by all the gas and oil in Israel, because that's how they're controlling Europe and the Middle East, and that's how they're enriching themselves. If you take away their sort of monopoly on oil and gas, they're going to lose their power and they're going to lose money. And when you know you have a regime that doesn't care about like ethics and stuff, they're going to go like, well, we're going to go put a stop to this. So it's economic reasons why Russia will attack, purely economic. And they want to shut that off. And not only do they want to shut it off, they want control of it. Because they're already the big supplier to half the world. Now they just want to go get where the rest of the supply is. Wars have been fought over that for millennia, right? So it's really no big surprise what's going to draw Russia into this war, is it? It's like, no. And anyway, so let's move on. Number 6, Iran, Turkey, and the other Muslim nations invade Israel for religious reasons. Iran could probably care less, or couldn't care less, be more accurate. They couldn't care less probably about the oil and gas in Israel. Their goal is to have no Israel. And I said this last week, the problem in the Middle East with the Israel and Palestinians it's not about land. It is not. Because the Palestinians could have had all that land before 1948 and they didn't, because it was desolate. They didn't want it. They just they want the Jews out. They want them out. So it's not about land. It's about religion. And Iran has publicly stated for years, we want to wipe Israel off the map. Not because they want to live there, they just want to wipe them out. Like exterminate them as a race, as a religion, whatever. They've publicly said that. Now Turkey is kind of like, Israel kind of rubs us the wrong way too. There's a news site from the Mideast called the Al Jaminer. It's a Mideast reporting agency, and they quoted President Erdogan last month, like a week ago Monday. And he says this. He says, he promised that he will mobilize the whole world, especially the Islamic world, to stop Israel's terrorism and occupation. So the president of Turkey, a nation that used to be very friendly and protective of Israel, now the president is saying, I'm going to mobilize the world against that nation. Turkey's saying that. If Turkey comes against Israel, decides they're going against Israel, which they've already decided, obviously, it's right in the news, then what's to stop Iran and Russia from getting into Syria? Nothing. In fact, they're already there. If Turkey wanted to stop them, they would have stopped them a long time ago. And not only is Turkey not going to stop them, they're going to join them. And so when you look at, we don't have to put the map back up, but when you look at that map, you've got GOG or Magog, Russia in the north, but then all the way around it, you've got Muslim nations that are joining together. So Russia for economic reasons, the Muslim nations for spiritual reasons. By the way, there are some Muslim nations that will not join the attack. Do you hear the Abraham Accord? President 45 instituted that, and those that signed are not a part of this war. Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Qatar, Egypt. Egypt was always, back in the day, 67 and 73, they were the ones that led the wars against Israel. Egypt's like, no. So there are a lot of Muslim nations who are not taking part of this, but there's some who are. Interesting. And when you look like, well, how come not all the Islamic nations are? Then you look at what's been going on current events, because some have signed these peace treaties and we're not going to mix it up. We're not going to do that. We don't want to mess with their oil and gas, and we don't want to wipe them off the face of the earth. They're not our favorite, but we're not going to kill them. It is so, I keep saying this, just amazing how so many current events are coming together so quickly and so fast in areas especially like this. All right. We're going to go a little over time. Is that okay? Okay, we're getting there. We're getting really close. Let me read this. You can't leave you hanging, right? The war hasn't started yet. We got Ezekiel 38, chapter 14. Therefore, son of man, prophesy and say to Gog, this is what the sovereign Lord says. In that day, when my people Israel are living in safety, will you not take notice of it? Will you come from your place in the far north, you and your many nations with you, all of them riding on horses? Obviously, that's a metaphor because they didn't know that there weren't, whatever. A great horde, a mighty army. You will advance against my people Israel like a cloud that covers the land. In days to come, Gog, I will bring you against my land, so that the nations may know me when I am proved holy through you before their eyes. Oh, don't you love God's war strategy? Oh, this gets better. Allow me to keep reading. This is what the sovereign Lord says. You are the one I spoke of in former days by my servants, the prophets of Israel. At that time, they prophesied for years that I would bring you against them. This is what will happen in that day. When Gog attacks the land of Israel, my hot anger will be aroused, declares the sovereign Lord. In my zeal and fiery wrath, I declare that at that time there shall be a great earthquake in the land of Israel. The fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, the beasts of the field, every creature that moves along the ground, and all the people on the face of the earth will tremble at my presence. This is not his second coming, but they know it. He's causing things to start happening. The mountains will be overturned, the cliffs will crumble, and every wall will fall to the ground. I will summon a sword against Gog on all my mountains, declares the sovereign Lord. Every man's sword will be against his brother. I will execute judgment on him with plague and bloodshed. I will pour down torrents of rain, hailstones, and burning sulfur on him and his troops, and on the many nations with him. And so I will show my greatness and my holiness, and I will make myself known in the sight of many nations. Then they will know that I am the Lord. Yes. Oh, man. I feel like we're in the locker room before the game, right? And the coach is getting you all ramped up. And we don't have to play. We just get to watch. I've told you this is the most exciting time to be alive. And now, okay, war is terrible. God is not putting the spirit of war in Gog. It's already there. He's just backing off. Okay, do what's in your heart, and I'm going to use it to show the world who I am, including my nation Israel. Have at it, and I'm going to smash you. Number 7, God will defeat the enemies of Israel and prove his power and glory to all the world. Again, this is not even the second coming. This is like the war before that, before the tribulation, because now he's turning his attention towards Israel and the world. And it's like, okay, all those who are going to have gotten saved or pretty close to getting saved, the rest of you are coming against me. I'll show you who's king. By the way, no country or world leader will be able to take credit for helping Israel win this war. You know, I consider myself patriotic. And I'm like, come on, U.S., send your bombers, send the Navy, let's wipe them out, right? I mean, let's do that. Let's do this, military. You can do it. Best military in the world. You can do this. And God's saying like, no, stand down. Because I don't want anybody else to get credit other than me. So that's kind of that's going to be a weird thing for me and some of you, like, okay, U.S., let's go. Like, well, maybe not. Let's watch God do his thing here. Okay, now we're in Ezekiel 39. We're getting close to being done here. Verse 25. Therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I will now restore the fortunes of Jacob, that's Israel, and will have compassion on all the people of Israel. And I will be zealous for my holy name. They will forget their shame and all the unfaithfulness they showed toward me when they lived in safety in their land with no one to make them afraid. When I have brought them back from the nations and gathered them from the countries of their enemies, 1948, I will be proved holy through them in the sight of many nations. That's this coming war. Then they will know that I am the Lord their God. For though I sent them into exile among the nations, I will gather them to their own land, not leaving any behind. I will no longer hide my face from them, for I will pour out my spirit on the people of Israel, declares the sovereign Lord. Number 8, after the war of Gog and Magog, the Jewish people and the nation of Israel will experience a Spirit-filled revival. We know that not everybody gets saved because that doesn't happen until Jesus comes back at the end of Armageddon. And they all will be saved. But we know that a lot of them are going to be. There's going to be revival in Israel. And there's going to be revival across the whole world because there's going to be a portion of the world that's going to get mad at God and even get more mad when they know what he did against people who are against him. But there are going to be a lot of people that are going to go, whoa, not only is God real, but he's powerful. And he cares for his people. I know we're over time. I just feel like I need to say this. I'm going to try to do this quickly. It's not in my notes, but that scares you, I know. A few years ago, I was reading in Revelation about the new heavens and the new earth. And in the past, it's like, God, couldn't you just let everybody in? I mean, maybe the really, really, really mean, ugly people, not ugly looking, but the violent, maybe not those people. But couldn't you just, I'm just thinking because it talks about the gates, they can't, be. Well, anyway, and I just felt like the Lord spoke to me. He said, read what it says here. There'll be no more sadness, no more death, no more tears. People won't be lying to each other and hurting each other. He's going to make a safe place. That's a buzzword. I didn't mean you know what I'm saying. He's going to make a safe place for his kids, us, to live with him forever. And he's not going to let people in who are going to jeopardize that. God has given people in the history of mankind, you see God smoking people, right? Well, he sure seems like an angry God. Yeah, after centuries of giving people a chance, and when those people come against his kids, I've given you centuries of chance to back off of my kids. You've not listened to me. You've only gotten more violent, more hard. There's nothing more. I'm going to stomp you out. Thanks, Dad. Really, thank you, Dad. Because he's going to take care of you. You're the apple of his eye. And he is going to make sure that there's not going to be people who are, for eternity, going to be a thorn in your side. They're going to be bringing yucky stuff into eternity. And he's given people chance after chance after chance. And finally, it says his holy anger is going to, I've had it up to here. You, GOG, have been thumbing your nose at me, and you and your country and your leaders for centuries. You won't acknowledge me as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. I'll show you who is King of Kings. And he's not doing it just to be angry. He's doing it out of his love for us and his people, because we're grafted into Israel. That's another nation, another sermon. Just feel like I need to say that, because when you look at this, God, why are you doing that? But all he comes down to it is because of his love for his people. And he's not going to allow people who are constantly coming against him in rebellion to jeopardize eternity with him in a perfect place. It says, when these things begin to take place, stand up and lift up your heads, because your redemption is drawing near. I keep feeling like the Lord has been saying this past week, people aren't ready. I've heard it over and over. People are not ready. Get them ready. Get them ready. I think he's talking about Christians and non-Christians. I think there are Christians who are asleep at the wheel, who are complacent, who don't understand the times we're living in. We're getting into crunch time. We're getting into the final stages of labor. That's what's going on in our world. That's why there's all the bumping and shaking and writhing and stuff. We're in labor. God's creation is in labor and about to deliver something beautiful and amazing. It was not going to be without some pain and some trials and some tribulation. But lift up your head, because don't get caught, don't get sucked down into that. Lift up your head, he's coming. He's coming soon. These are his signs. And I'm going to make sure I'm ready. I'm going to make sure my family's ready. I'm going to make sure my friends are ready. So it's time for us to wake up so we know how to pray and we know how to speak prophetically when these things start happening. We're going to prophesy to the leader of GOG. GOG, bring him on down, because you're going to see something. You're going to see that you're not all that. God's all that. Lord, thank you for revealing at least parts of the future that revolve around your return, so that we don't have to live in anxiety, so that we don't have to live in fear, that we can actually start to get excited that we're about to be with you forever in a perfect place. But Lord, we need to wake up. We need to be ready. I pray for anyone here who has not really accepted you and received you, that would happen today. Lord, I pray for family and friends that we love who might not be ready, that you give us the right words to say, that you would draw them close to you, Lord, that you would bring them to a place of salvation so that we don't have to be fearful for them either. So Lord, we thank you for salvation. We thank you for loving us. We lift up our heads to you now and look to you, the author and perfecter of our faith, Jesus Christ. Amen.